I remember being 60 pounds overweight on the bottom of the shower floor, on my hands and knees, sobbing, pulling chunks of hair out of the drain so the water could go down, being focused on living and surviving. Literally
Yeah.
being terrified to close my eyes at night because I didn't know if they were going to wake up the next morning. So the ages that I had cancer really defined how I see life now. When somebody hears that C word, they've checked out. They're done. They're hung up on the beginning of that whole paragraph that the doctor's going to dive into. However, for me, my parents told me, you have a condition, we're going to do everything we can to take care of it, and oh, by the way. And I remember looking at the next lady in line, her mascara was running, and I could tell that she'd been crying. And her eyes were just bloodshot, bright red, and she came up when it was her turn. She latched onto me, just held on to me, hugged me, buried her face in my chest, and lost it. And I'm thinking to myself, keep it together, keep it composed. I want people to realize that not everyone's going to climb Everest, but we all have an Everest to climb. We all have things that we're trying to push forward and accomplish and do. And we just have to find that determination within all of us. It's there. Sometimes we just need to believe that we can bring it out.
Hello, it's Nataliya, and welcome to Beehive Podcast, the place where insightful conversations with the most extraordinary people take place. Each episode is an opportunity to explore my guests' personal journeys, lifestyle choices, and aspects of their personal success formula. Join me by subscribing now and enjoy the listen.
I'm really blessed to be talking to great people through the means of my podcast. And today I'm talking not just to someone who's great, but to someone who's extraordinary. So he's been voted one of the top 8 most inspirational people in history. So please meet Swarner. Sean, welcome to Beehive Podcast.
Hey, I appreciate that. And who voted on that, I'm not quite sure. Maybe it was my mom, my dad, my brother, and some other people.
And modest. There you go. Sean, well, your story is incredible. I'm not the first one to tell you that. And you've redefined impossible. So you became the only person who climbed every highest mountain on every continent. You trekked in the South and North Pole, and you compete in Hawaii Ironman. And you've done all of that with one lung, and this is as a result of you being a cancer survivor, and not just once, but twice. This is incredible as it is, and I can't believe all of that applies to just one person. And whilst your body's been through so much with illness and radiation and everything, you still keep pushing it to the limits over and over again. Sean, why?
It's a great question. I ask myself that same question every morning I wake up. Why am I still doing this? Why am I still doing this? I would say for 2 reasons. One, at one point in my life, I was given 14 days to live. At another point, I was read my last rites. I was in a medically induced coma for a year of my life. My first goal was to crawl 8 feet from the hospital bed to the bathroom so I wouldn't soil the sheets. So essentially so I wouldn't vomit all over myself. So I think for myself, I'm proving that I'm still alive. There's a huge difference between being alive and living. And I want to continue living. I want to continue getting out there and pushing the envelope. But at the same time, I really think it's for others. And that's probably the biggest reason. A quick story, when I was giving a keynote presentation here locally in the States, there was a queue of people waiting to come up and talk to me afterwards. And I remember looking at the next lady in line, her mascara was running, and I could tell that she'd been crying. And her eyes were just bloodshot, bright red. And she came up when it was her turn. she latched onto me, just held on to me, hugged me, buried her face in my chest, and lost it. And I'm thinking to myself, keep it together, keep it composed. And
Mm.
she finally composed herself. She leaned back and she looked at me and she told me that in the past 6 months, she lost her husband to cancer. She lost her son to cancer. She got diagnosed for the third time with breast cancer. And in her hotel room, she actually had a suicide note with sleeping pills and alcohol.
Oh my gosh.
And she told me that she convinced herself to go to one more presentation, and it happened to be mine. And she told me that my presentation and my story saved her life. So I think that's probably the main reason I do what I do, to let other people know that, their life's not always going to be great,
Hmm.
but you can always find the great in something. And I think
Wow.
if I can help one person on earth, then I'm happy.
And you've helped so many and inspired so many and changed so many lives. How does it feel?
You know, there are usually, I'll answer that in a roundabout way. I
Mm.
do a lot of coaching too. There are four things that hold people back.
Yeah.
And I call them the gales, the gremlins, the interpretation, the assumptions, the interpretations, and the limiting beliefs. The gale is the gremlin, sorry. The gremlin is the little voice on your shoulder chatting at you. You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You're whatever. And my gremlin, I named him Cooper. We have a great conversation. We have a great relationship.
Okay.
So, so the gremlin was there at some point in your life to protect you from whatever it may have been in the past.
Climbing the dangerous mountains.
Exactly. Something like that.
Yeah.
And now I know the gremlin's there to support me and push me, and we both want the best for both of us. And for me, that gremlin has always been, you will never be enough. Not not that I'm always striving for more and more and more, but whatever I'm doing, I don't think I'll ever come to a point where I'm comfortable with what I've accomplished, because I can always do more. That's the gremlin that's in the side of my mind, inside my mind, holding me back. So to answer, I would say that I don't know if it'll ever be enough.
Have you always had that, or is it specifically after cancer? Because you had your cancer quite earlier on. You were 13 when you had it first, and then a different type of cancer second time when you were 16. You were teenager, so young. Was it in you all the time? And I know you've been very fit and healthy and athlete before cancer. Was it always in you?
I think so. The adventure's always been there. The concept of pushing myself has always been there. And I think it came from my parents, because let's flash back before the cancer. 5, 6 years old, I became a competitive swimmer. How competitive you can be at age 5, I don't know, but I was swimming back and forth in the pool.
Yeah.
And whenever I came across and did the 25-meter breaststroke, I remember touching the wall, and my mom or my dad would always be there to pull me out of the water. And they would, excuse me, they would always ask me two questions. One, did you do your best? And two, did you have fun? Never, hey, why didn't you beat Steve? Why didn't you beat Joe? It was always, did you do your best and did you have fun? And learning that from my parents and moving forward into the times that I had the cancer, it was basically my teenage years, when most people are worried about being popular, when most people are worried about the latest hairstyles, nicest clothes, where they're going to sit at lunch without being made fun of, being bullied, whatever it might be. I remember being 60 pounds overweight on the bottom of the shower floor, on my hands and knees, sobbing, pulling chunks of hair out of the drain so the water could go down, being focused on living and surviving. Literally being terrified to close my eyes at night because I didn't know if they were going to wake up the next morning. So the ages that I had cancer really defined how I see life now. I see life through a completely different set of lenses.
So you think it would have been different? It would have been different to you if you didn't go through those experiences,
Oh, absolutely. But
right?
would I go back and do the same thing again? Absolutely. I think it was probably some of the worst experiences I've ever had, but it was the best experience I've ever had. It's taught me
Wow.
so much about life, and I think it's really helped anyone who goes through struggle. When you come
Mm-hmm.
out on the other side, it's up to you to decide how you want that to affect you and how you want to interpret what you just went through. And for me, I see my cancers as a good thing
Mm-hmm.
because they taught me a lot about life. They taught me the meaning of life. They didn't teach me the purpose of life, but now I have discovered a life of purpose.
Wow. When you, and I know you were quite young, but maybe because you are so involved in the community for cancer healing, you talk to a lot of patients that fighting cancer or cancer survivors. When the diagnosis is announced, what does it take to fight it, to pick yourself up, to get to, I'm going to live rather than give up?
I think if you look at the medical industry, at least here in the States, the how they treat the disease has changed quite a bit. New drugs, new chemotherapy medicines, new research has shown that you should actually exercise while you're going through treatment. I was told I shouldn't, but I did. But what hasn't changed is the psychology behind it. So, for example, let's say they approach you and say, Natalia, you have cancer, and this is what we're going to do about it. When somebody hears that C word, they've checked out. They're done. They're hung up on the beginning of that whole paragraph that the doctor is going to dive into. However, for me, my parents told me, well, you have a condition. We're going to do everything we can to take care of it. And oh, by the way. So
Right.
I think just the referencing how it was approached and how I was receptive to having cancer was completely different than most people. And I think if they just flip that around, people would have a
Mm.
different mentality because going into anything, whether you think you can or you can't, you're absolutely right. So having that a strong mentality going in, oh, I have something, okay, we're going to do everything we can to fix it. Great, let's go. As opposed to checking out when you first hear cancer, then what do? You don't hear the rest of it. Oh, by the way, you have to take a pill for 3 days and you're fine. You wouldn't even hear that part.
That's right. That's right. And this is the narrative that people don't control. It's, in their hands, completely in the hands of the doctors. So what does it actually take, though? To, whilst I understand the delivery of the narrative, but how do you find the and I'll explain, it came from the conversation actually earlier today with someone who's a close friend, and her dad passed away, and I guess it really hit home. So obviously I mentioned my interview with you to her, and that was almost a question from her. How do you get to redefine, and pick yourself up, and after you persisted for 15 minutes a day, a week, but how do you get up and stop fighting and believe in positive? Is there anything that people can do that can help them?
Yeah, absolutely. Going through, I mentioned it earlier, going through anything traumatic, you have a choice on how you want to react to it. You may not be in control of the situation, but you can always control how you react and what you say, what you do, what you think when you pay attention to it. But it also boils down and comes down to your personal core values. What matters most to you? And if people, I actually, it's interesting you ask this question because for the longest time, I was dealing with the cancer in a way that wasn't supportive of what I wanted in my life. Going to bed, like I said, being terrified to close my eyes because I didn't know if I was going to wake up the next morning. Day in, day in, day out for years. And then all of a sudden, the oncologist says, Sean, you're in remission. Go live your life. My friends were happy for me, of course. My mom, my dad, my family support system, fantastic. They loved it. Go live your life. Everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go through and it becomes your day in, day out, year after year after year, you don't know anything else. And now all of a
It's a
sudden the doctor
habit, isn't
says,
it?
exactly. So now all of a sudden the doctor says you're in remission. My first thought was, what do I do now? Where do I go? So I actually, it's like I said, it's funny you asked that question. I put together a program called the Big Hill Challenge that helps people go from here to here without going down into that valley. It guides them and empowers them to build a bridge from where they are to where they want to go based on their personal core values, what matters most to them, how they can feed into that by making mindful decisions, by bookending your day, waking up with affirmations, and going to bed with gratitude, as opposed to going to bed feeling sad or feeling like
Sad.
you haven't accomplished something. A lot of different aspects in the challenge.
And it takes a lot to go from you have already changed your neurological, the neurons that you've built through those, you've established a new habit. To break that habit and to build a new one, that takes a lot of willpower and a lot of work.
It does, but once you understand what your personal core values are, what matters most to you, you have an underlying deeper reason for wanting to do it. And it doesn't feel like you have to do something. You do it because you want to do something.
Right. Very powerful. And I watched your documentary, The True North, and I cried, of course. It's extremely emotional, very, very powerful. And how relentless you are and the strength of your spirit conquering the North Pole, and by doing so completing the Explorer's Grand Slam. But what you mentioned there is that because of how peaceful it is over there, that is almost this meditative state, and where it's just you, your inner voices, your inner thoughts. So when you push yourself so hard and when the challenges get really tough, physically tough, what are those inner thoughts of yours?
It goes back and forth to from wanting to give up to continuing forward. However, if you listen to your internal dialogue and pay attention to that, you realize that you speak to yourself more than anyone else throughout the day. And for most people, I would say that internal dialogue was 80-90% negative throughout the day. My question a long time ago to myself was, would you be friends who with someone who is that negative to you? No, then why do you do it to yourself? Why do you
Good
allow that to
one.
happen? So what I
Yeah.
do now is I have a mantra when I'm going up to, say, the North Pole or on an expedition. The higher I go, the stronger I get. The higher I go, the stronger I get. Over and over and over. And a great analogy is, say you have a glass of water. Dirty water represents negative thoughts. Clean water represents positive thoughts. If you have a glass of dirty water, negative thoughts in your brain, and you turn on the faucet, the spigot, and just constantly flush in clean water, what's going to happen to the glass of water?
It's gonna clean
Same
up.
thing
Yeah.
happens to your brain. You just have to be mindful of what you're feeding yourself and what you're listening to, because you are in charge of programming your brain, no one else. And if you're not careful, it will be programmed by social media, by the news, by external factors. But you need to pay attention to that internal dialogue more than anything else.
I love that. And it's so simple, isn't it? But it happens to be so hard, just on a consistent basis.
All
It's
it,
interesting.
but it's the same thing as getting to the top of Mount Everest, one step at a time.
Yeah, I'd say that's quite difficult, getting to the Mount Everest, which is incredible and unbelievable that you've done it. So many interviews and so well documented. What do we not know about you? What is missing?
Oof, what's missing? Well, because of the medicine, I can't have children
Hmm.
physiologically. I
Hmm.
recently got married 4 years
Congratulations.
ago. Well, thank you very much. I've heard it's more of a difficult challenge being married than it is climbing Everest. So it's an uphill it's an uphill challenge for
Is it
sure.
true?
No, not at all. Not at all. You know about me. One question I had was on a plane when I was traveling recently, because I travel quite a bit and give keynote presentations all around the world. One guy asked me, "Where's your favorite place to visit?"
Hmm.
And without hesitation, I literally said, "Home."
And where is your home?
Home is in Colorado. I think
Is it?
the prettiest state in the country.
So what does it make it home for you? Because you do travel a lot and you are connected to a lot of places.
That's a good point. Home is where the heart is. And my
Hmm.
wife is from Puerto Rico. She's Puerto Rican, born and raised down there. So we have two homes, down in Puerto Rico with her family and then up here with my family. So kind of best of both worlds, and both feel like home. But wherever you feel comfortable is home. For me, it happens to be the mountains and the beach now. So I'm
And the beach.
fortunate that I have the best of both worlds.
That's amazing. Well, now as you mentioned your wife, and my question would be, with your relentless explorer's nature and spirit, you constantly put your health and your life at risk. How does your family cope with it?
I take calculated risks. So
Calculated risks. Okay.
calculated risks. So I'm leaving in a couple weeks for my 24th trip up Kilimanjaro. I do it every year as a fundraiser for a cancer charity, and I potentially may be going back to Everest and attempting it with my one lung and no supplemental oxygen, just to see what's possible. Those things I keep from my mom and my dad. I don't tell them about the ideas and concepts I have. But I
I
think,
was hoping for them to listen to this podcast interview.
well,
Now
then
we have to keep it
now they
quiet.
might. Now they might be knowing. Uh,
Okay.
but they know what they're getting into because of my adventurous spirit. And in all honesty, I don't want to live to be. My grandma just turned 100 in October. And she's
Wow.
gone on so many different adventures. Her and Grandpa were married for 70 some years.
Yeah.
Amazing individuals. They travel the world. And I do not want to live to be 100 and not see the world. I don't want to live to be 100 and have regrets. I would rather experience a full life
Hmm.
and die at 60 as opposed to doing nothing and living to 110.
Okay. Does your wife come with you to the missions?
She has gone up Kilimanjaro once. I took
Okay.
her up to Everest Base Camp once.
Hmm.
Uh, she did a half marathon once. Notice there's a theme running here.
There's a theme, I know.
Once.
Yes.
Uh, so now, whenever I go up Kilimanjaro, she supports 100 orphans with food for a year, and she's done that for the past 5 years.
That's
Before
incredible.
meeting me, her concept and her idea of stepping out of her comfort zone was going to the beach in Puerto Rico and forgetting her bottle of sunscreen. So
Wow.
we
You've
have
changed
developed
her.
yes, but I think she's changed me as well. And I think is if you can compliment your significant other by pushing each other out of their comfort zones for a good reason, not because you just want to make them feel uncomfortable. That's just mean. But if you can do it for good reasons to help them have a more fulfilling and rich life, Absolutely, because I think life is just beyond that line of fear, and most people are stuck looking at that line, terrified to take that first step.
So well said. So well said. Wonderful. And you mentioned Kilimanjaro. You keep coming back there every year. What is so special about Kilimanjaro?
Well, I love the culture. I love the people. I was adopted into the Chugga tribe recently,
What?
and it's a local tribe of
Wow.
indigenous folks at the base of the mountain. They call me in Swahili Mzungu Kicha, which means crazy white man in Swahili. So there's love and respect,
I
definitely.
like that.
I was adopted into the Maasai tribe as well. I mean, amazing people. But what I
Maasai warriors.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
What, did you have
Yeah.
to kill the lion?
No, I had to drink some cow blood.
Oh,
So skipping over one of the things,
okay.
one of the reasons I
Wow.
go back to Kilimanjaro is
Yeah.
I know I can make it. This will be my 24th trip up the highest mountain in Africa. And what I enjoy most is very similar to, if you celebrate Christmas, great. If you don't, great. You'll still get the concept. It's very similar to Christmas. I don't need any gifts. I don't want anything, but I enjoy giving gifts to my wife, to my nephews, to my mom, my dad, and seeing their faces light up when they open the present. It's that same feeling when I lead people to the top of Kilimanjaro and I see
Mm.
their faces change in an instant. The tears come out, the emotions are raw, and people, I can see that their lives change like that. That's why I keep going back.
So is it the dopamine? Is it the achievement? How do you explain that?
I would say physiologically, it probably is the dopamine, but it's also the exhaustion and the altitude. But then they also become empowered. I'm approached quite often to give keynote talks, and people say, "Well, we're looking for an inspirational inspirational or motivational speaker." And I tell them, you got the wrong guy, because inspiration and motivation is fleeting. However, if you can empower somebody, you can change their life. So that's how I use Kilimanjaro as an analogy or as a metaphor to empower someone, because when they get to the top, they always say, "Thank you so much for getting me here." I look at them and say, "I didn't get you here.
Hmm. But you did. But you
I,
did.
I, I showed them the possibility within themselves to do it."
And that's often just as valuable because sometimes you just need that helping hand and a push, don't you? To just discover the realms of what you can do.
Absolutely. I have never been to the summit of any significant mountain by myself.
Mm. So, and you climbed Everest, and you want to climb it without oxygen.
Well, now that you're hoping my parents watch this, the answer is probably no.
I love this. I love this. Um, so but so you I don't even know where to like. This is crazy idea. I'm almost feel like parental responsibility now as I have this information. Um, is it physiologically possible? Obviously, one lung. I know that other interviews you said you've learned to use the whole of your lung in order to breathe. Is it physiologically okay for you to do that?
There's one way to find out.
Oh, come on, Sean. Sean, you are honestly the inspiration to so many. Who is your inspiration? Who inspires you?
My biggest inspiration is people who are literally fighting for their lives. Cancer patients, for example. I When I'm on an expedition, for example, the North Pole, you mentioned True North, the film. I can always pick up the phone, the satellite phone,
Mm-hmm.
and have insurance kick in. A helicopter comes in, picks me up, takes me out. Like, I'm not feeling it right now. I can come back next year. People who are going through the chemo, people who are fighting for their lives, they can't pick up their cell phone and say, I'm not feeling it today. I'll come back next year. They don't have that option.
Yeah.
People who are going through difficult times, people who persevere. Those are the ones who really encourage me to keep going. They're truly the biggest inspirations I could think of.
It was very, very pivotal moment in the documentary when you pushed the sledge with the flag on top with all the names of people touched by cancer. It was unbelievable. I can see where the inspiration comes from and how heartfelt it is for you and what actually drives you and motivates you. It's absolutely beautiful. And you mentioned you have your programs where you help people, you lead people all around the world to accomplishing their goals, to their reestablishing their personal leadership and redefining their own impossible. So what are your tips and tools? Maybe shorter version, of course, as it is there is a program out there, but for the podcast listeners, what are the tips and tools? How do you get to redefine your impossible?
Step number one would be knowing what you truly value, knowing why you're doing what you're doing, because it's never about the finish line. It's never about the summit. It's never about the new car. It's never about the raise. It's never about the new house. It's never about that physical stuff. It's never about the goal.
Yeah.
Because you can always make more money. You can always buy another car. You can always climb another mountain. You can always run another race. If you're looking for those things to make you happy, you're going to be unhappy your entire life. If you think things, materialistic objects and goal accomplishment is going to make you happy, you're going to be unhappy your whole life, because happiness is an internal job. But to become happy, you have to know what you truly value. It could be clarity, love, appreciation, family, health, wealth, whatever it might be. Whatever your goals represent to you, peel back the layers and discover the true meaning behind them. Because that's where you can start making some real progress in your life, understanding that it's never about the thing, it's the meaning behind the thing. So figure out what your personal core values are first. That way you can then utilize those to make proper decisions to never have any regrets.
And in terms of making those first steps towards the change, physically, because you push people to do also physical challenges, right? As well as the mental work that you do. Is that how you work?
Correct, but also realize that it's amazing how mental being physical is.
How mental being physical is.
Yeah, and so many people, the mind gives up before the body should.
Interesting. Yeah. So strength of your mind.
Absolutely. It's so many people go to the gym, they run, they exercise, they do whatever it might be to build their muscles, but most people forget to build the most important muscle in your body, which is that 6-inch gap between your head.
Yeah. And you're the founder of your charity organization, the Cancer Climber Association. Is there anything that listeners can help you with? Is there any message that you would like to share?
Absolutely. I appreciate that. The Cancer Climber Association pays for a survivor's trip every year to go up Kilimanjaro. So this is where the gift of Christmas comes in, the gift of giving. We cover all expenses for a survivor to go up Kilimanjaro, and then it's the responsibility of that survivor to raise funds for next year's survivor. So paying it forward. And I love hearing what happens when those two survivors get together to talk about their recent trip up Kilimanjaro, and then the other person who's going up Kilimanjaro, but then that deeper conversation about their journeys and how the Kilimanjaro and how the mountains relate back to having cancer and going through that. So we're always looking for survivors. We're always looking for support. And it's just cancerclimber.org or SeanSwarner.com. I mean, I want people to realize that not everyone's going to climb Everest, but we all have an Everest to climb. We all have things that we're trying to push forward and accomplish and do. And we just have to find that determination within all of us. It's there. Sometimes we just need to believe that we can bring it out.
Mm. And you also wrote 2 incredible books.
Yeah, Keep Climbing. And then the most recent one is Conquering Your Everest. That kind of dives into vivid visualization and helping people achieve what they want to achieve. And again, going back to the personal core values, it helps them figure out why they want to do it.
Beautiful. Sean, and I have some fun Blitz questions for you as well. What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is actually on my business card, and I always have this business card right in front of me. And I'm going to hold it right up here so you can see it. It always seems impossible until it's done.
Nelson Mandela.
Exactly.
That's a powerful one. That's a powerful one. I can see how you live by it and how much people could use that as well. One superpower that you'd like to have?
A superpower I'd like to have. Initially I was thinking mind reading, but I would like to be able to read minds when I wanted to. So not where all these ideas and it's coming into my, I want to be able to control it.
So you're saying you don't want to hear everybody's gremlin.
Exactly. I want to be selective in my mind reading.
Tasks that you'd like to outsource?
Ooh. How much time do we have for this?
Loads.
I'm looking at my computer right now on my Outlook. I have 984 unread emails. I would love to outsource those.
You need a PA.
That would be great. I would love to outsource proactive outreach for client acquisition for more people for the Big Hill Challenge and for speaking engagements.
Okay. That's a good one. That's complex. Can you think of the ways to do that?
Oh, I'm working on them right now.
You're working on them right now.
Yeah.
Good one. Very practical. That's a good one. Any household work?
Well, my
Getting
office
real
is
here. Getting real here.
my office is relatively clean.
It wasn't a hint.
Right. It's like, did you notice something I didn't notice over here? Should I clean up the No housework. I love cleaning. I love cooking too.
You do.
Yeah.
There you go.
I like doing things myself. I really do. Like, let's say, for example, I pull up to a very nice hotel. We'll say the Four Seasons, just because that's the top of mind.
Yeah.
Pull up to the hotel, and somebody's always there. Sir, can I help you with your bags? I'm like, no, I got it. I enjoy doing things myself.
Fair enough. That's the way to go, I think. Your dream place to live?
My dream place to live right now would be Steamboat Springs, Colorado. I just said that because it's beautiful up there.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And can I have 2?
Absolutely.
Belize.
How come? Interesting.
I've been to Belize numerous times. I've worked with their cancer charity. They have one cancer charity down there. I visited the Cancer Institute, and it's just a place that offers so much. They have the jungle, they have caves, they have the beach, they have the mountains, they have the history of the Mayas. They have so many things, and I just love the country. I love the people. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. You know, this is the first. This is at first someone mentioned Belize as a place to live. Wow, good one. So, and the last one, top choice for a famous house guest, and it can be a current or historic figure.
Does it have to be famous?
So that people could relate, but please go for it if it's someone in your circle.
I would say the first person that popped to my mind was my grandpa.
Your grandpa. Oh, that's beautiful. You had a good relationship with him.
I did. He passed away when he was 95, 96 years old. And I know I mentioned him earlier, and I would love to have dinner with him again.
Thank you so much, Sean, for being so open and honest and giving the listeners the true inspiration and true understanding how you wired, or a little bit more. I don't think you can actually you can't actually understand in the full sense, but I'm sure the inspiration and everything that you resonate and the length of achievements, it makes you reflect back on yourself and think, you know, why don't I try to push myself? Why don't I try to get out of the comfort zone? Why don't I try to look at my values and establish for myself what is my impossible, and against some odds perhaps try to achieve it. Thank you for being incredible, and thank you for all the work that you do to inspire people that are cancer survivors and battling cancer, and also everybody around.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. And one thing I just thought of as well is, human beings are creatures of habit. If you want something different, do something different. Just pick one thing that has the most power over you. For most people, it's probably social media, where they're just mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, something else. Limit yourself. Be aware of how you're spending your time, or just eliminate it completely. But just pick one thing that you think has the most control over you and replace it with something positive, something that's going to benefit you. As opposed to consuming, create something.
There you go, the hashtag Sean Swarner challenge. And back to social media with the hashtag. I agree, and I'd love to for the listeners to share maybe with you as well. And where can people connect with you best?
Yeah, that's the easiest question you've asked us this whole time. That's SeanSwarner.com.
Sean, thank you for being you. And thank you for being so impactful.
My pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to help out.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Beehive Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Bye now till the next episode. Look after yourselves and your loved ones.